this video is going to be looking at the Champions League matchup between Bayern Munich and PSG. Now we're going to look at how Bayern Munich knocked PSG out of the Champions League, knocked Messi and Mbappe out, and the tactical setup of each team. Now before we get into that, check out both my books. They're in the links in the description below. I'm using the Once Video Analyzer to make this video. All that is in the description, and be sure to check out my new tactics course in the description as well. So be sure to check all that out, and let's get right into the tactics of the match. So first we're going to look at PSG in a build-up. So they did go with a back five or three central defenders when they were in possession, but when they built from the back, it looked more like a back four because of their asymmetry with their central defenders, fanning out into the wide area and going with two central defenders being split by their goalkeeper. Then we have Verratti holding as our single pivot, playing with two eights on either side of him and allowing Messi especially to drop into the right half space and link up with the midfielders with the threat of Mbappe in behind. Now Bayern, they pressed in a 4-2-3-1. Looking to curve their runs and press the ball to one side, using the wide area as their focal point for pressing traps and denying any vertical passes into the half spaces. Now, as PSG moved higher up the field in possession of the ball, they played in quite a direct manner, looking in behind to the solution of Mbappe with his pace running in behind, especially early on throughout the match. And one key tendency to look at their shape in possession is the overload they're able to create on the left-hand side to try and get Messi more free in this right half space. So with Messi dropping deeper between the lines and even in front of the two holding midfielders, looking to get away from the back line and out of reach of the holding midfielders, a lot of times Messi would drop into these positions deeper between the first and second line of pressure. Now, what PSG would do in possession that was able to get him open, and something they would be able to exploit a little bit more, but not having the connections to access Messi on the ball from their first line was something that really limited them throughout the match. So when they would overload this far side, or this ball side, the far side of our screen, this left-hand side, it would drag this Bayern Munich's 4-4-2 shape, as we'll see, pressing the ball and having Musiala cheating to this weak side, creating this gap for Messi to operate into. So what this Bayern team would do in their 4-4-2, and later in the match the wingers would cheat into deeper areas, almost creating a back five we'll look into. But now the defensive line was pinned because of the pace of Mbappe running in behind. Defenders had to start deeper to deal with this pace and limit the space in behind, and this disconnected them from the wide areas and gave Messi more space. But like we said, there is no connecting links and no clear path to get Messi on the ball when the ball was in this left half space and the space was between the lines on the right half space. So this was probably the biggest tactical trend and deficiency in PSG's game, because they were able to overload this left-hand side, drag Bayern Munich's defensive shape, but they had no diagonality between their team, connecting their first line to their third line between the lines to really create superiority and generate high-quality chances moving into the final third. And with the tendency of Verratti to drop deeper, he was often in a deeper position disconnected from his more attacking midfielders. Now these other attacking midfielders pairing with Messi were able to use the man orientation in this defensive shape from Bayern to even create more space for Messi. So what could have happened is, if PSG were able to generate superiority, attract pressure to the first line, get Choupo-Moting to jump, and leave Verratti in a higher position, they might have had better luck connecting links to Lionel Messi and allow them to get the team further forward. This would then allow the defense to either jump and create space in behind for Mbappe, or get him in more enticing situations out wide. Now, as we see later in the game when they went to see out the result, Bayern Munich still played with their back four, which we'll highlight here, but now their weak side wide midfielder would cheat out just a little bit. So from here, their weak side wide midfielder would become detached with their other three midfielders, who would play very compact. Their two central strikers would prioritize blocking access into the holding midfielder, but also being able to be disconnected with Thomas Muller on the weak side on this right hand side, and Sané pressing the ball. So where on the left hand side we saw Musiala cheating forward, now we see Kingsley Coman cheating backwards and almost joining as a back five, creating a wing back shape to offer more coverage in this last line of defense. And we look at PSG's offensive shape in this still image, and they have almost 5 guys on the same vertical line, 3 guys on the wide area, and no one occupying the half spaces between the lines, and playing in a very disjointed offensive structure that made a resilient low block from Bayern enough to see out the game and managing the individual quality that PSG has. So now when we see at Bayern's offensive setup, we have their goalkeeper splitting their 2 central defenders, one in the left half space just off our screen here. And what we're going to look at in this picture, a really cool angle, is the wide structures from Bayern Munich and how the personnel in these wide structures influence their game model. We have Joshua Kimmich as their lone holding midfielder, and his ability to have diagonal passing options not just on the deeper half spaces but also having diagonal passes into his central forwards is something that's very unique to how Bayern Munich play, and these diagonal connections and a clear path to these advanced players was something that was greatly missing in PSG's team. So the wide structures from Bayern Munich have 2 players playing in the half spaces and 1 player holding the width. On this left hand side, it's Davies playing high and wide and not having too many narrow moments and not playing in the half space and interchanging his position as much on this left hand side. Now on the right hand side, we see a very similar structure, but now with the winger creating full width on this right hand side, and the biggest difference is Musiala on this side looks to play in between the lines with Choupo-Moting pinning the central defenders and giving space and freedom to Musiala. This allows him to get in 1v1 situations and play in a more free role and more space. Then he can link off of the target man Choupo-Moting with the threat of Alphonso Davies also pinning the fullback, making it very difficult to defend against. Now on this right hand side we have a very different dynamic. What we have is Goretzka and Thomas Muller as a partnership between the lines and often interchanging their positions, one playing higher and one coming deeper. Now Muller often drops between the lines with Goretzka comfortable pinning defenders and overloading this left-sided holding midfielder. Now with Thomas Muller dropping, it puts the defenders of PSG with a problem if they should jump, leave space in behind, and allow this space to be conceded for potentially a late runner coming in behind or coming across the field. Now we see PSG changing to a 4-2-3-1 in their defensive phase that allows Bayern Munich to target these holding midfielders, to overload them, and use these 3v3 wide structures to create superiority and try and generate diagonal passing options, as we said earlier, from Joshua Kimmich into the half spaces and into not just the deeper attacking midfielder, but into the more central forward players in this very asymmetric 4-3-3 shape. But the diagonal passes are crucial to Bayern Munich's game and is something, like I said, that was missing big time in PSG's offensive setup. Now the last picture will re-emphasize the offensive structure from Bayern Munich with Alphonso Davies playing high and wide on the left and the right-sided fullback playing deeper and more connected to create an asymmetric back four. Now they wouldn't quite create 3 central defenders, or they would create 3 central defenders, but this right side center back wouldn't go into the half space as we would typically see from a back 3. He would stay in the wide area. And now one common tendency from Bayern Munich is their 2-2 structure in advanced positions. We have our winger creating height and width on this right hand side, and Alphonso Davies starting in a little bit deeper position, but he'll be tasked with the same role on the left hand side. But the key aspect comes from their central structures with 2 players pinning and 2 players occupying width. And as we said, Musiala will look to create 1v1 situations, play off the shoulder, and play between the lines of this right-sided central midfielder. Then on this left side, we'll have interchanging movements from Goretzka and Thomas Muller to use the space in between the lines and change their roles and look to pin the back line and progress the ball in different types of ways, with pinning and threats in behind from Kingsley Coman on this right hand side through width. And this Bayern structure matched up really well against the PSG team because it was able to pin wide central defenders from PSG, attract pressure on this left-hand side of Bayern Munich's build-up with a jumping wingback, And on this right hand side, the deeper fullback was able to pull out a midfielder and create this space between the lines that Bayern Munich could then use in a very pragmatic way with constant threat in behind. So it was a very well set up Bayern Munich team, and the one frailty in this system is their lone holding midfielder not always having the connections between the lines, and because of the high volume of players between the lines, teams can go with a low block, cut off these passes, and make Bayern Munich struggle with gaining space in these dangerous areas. But on the day and over two legs, Bayern Munich were the deserved winners. And this is where we're going to wrap up the video. Let me know in the comments below if you think Bayern Munich deserved to beat PSG and go on to the next round of the Champions League. I'll see you in the next one.